Morning, everybody. John Spielkel here for GAI Insights, bringing you the Gen AI news, putting thoughts in your head and time in your day. We've got some interesting things, everything from why AI should be more open to new stuff from Microsoft. All right. Ankash, if you could start us off, that would be great.
Sure, John. Just sharing my screen.
All right.
Okay, so the first one that we have for today comes from Microsoft and talks about autonomous agents which can help scale different teams.
Yeah, lots here about creating your agents to make you more productive. Tim, what'd you think?
I thought this was a nice piece of high-level marketing and didn't say much and had a couple of okay use cases in it. So optional for the AI leader.
Okay.
The videos are particularly bereft of content.
All right. Paul, what do you think? Big Barney here?
Yeah, I'm getting my Barney. Hang on here. We haven't had Barney out for a while.
No, we haven't.
Yes. Barney's here.
All right.
Barney still lives.
All right. We're headed for a quick optional on this one. Some product announcement stuff. What do you think, Luda? Adam, you go with that?
Yeah, and it's not even ready for production. The first one they say they will open in a couple of months, I think. So it's totally optional.
All right, optional it is. Ankaj, next.
Okay, the next one comes from Cohere and they have provided a guide to securing LLM applications.
Yeah, kind of a whole digital book here on, different parts of how to think about security. What do you think, Adam?
I gave this an important. I've worked in cybersecurity long enough, and hopefully our audience may or may not know about what's known as the OWASP Top 10. There it is, the Top 10 OWASP vulnerabilities, and that's the Open Web Application Security Project. And it's basically a group that continually updates what are the top 10 security threats. And this article does a really good job of putting the lens of LLMs on the OWASP Top 10. So I think it's definitely worth taking a look at and passing along to a CISO or something like that within your organization.
All right. So you're making the case for important. What do folks think here?
Yeah, definitely important in my world. I mean, we actually worked hard. We actually were, I forget the gentleman's name. We're going to have OWASP present these updated list at our conference. We couldn't get the schedules to work out, but for folks in application develop, I mean, OWASP is really, really important. And now they're doing for LLMs. And having been through dozens and dozens of software projects, even the OWASP start. If you start a new project here, certainly we're doing this for giggles and grins. Let's go double check. And Adam, we always find one or two. So I think definitely important for anyone doing enterprise intelligence applications, in my view.
Yeah, it's a great primer. So Ankash, if you scroll down, they take one of these 10 and go why important, what to watch out for. And they obviously give us a Cohere treatment of this, but as a primer, it's a good document, very crisp and very to the point.
Are we going essential, you think?
We might.
I think important is fine. I mean, it's anybody who doesn't know this should be fired in a security organization at one level. There's nothing new here certainly at the conceptual level. It's just yet another arms race. Security is always an arms race. And that has to do with the fact, John, as you and I sometimes rant about a little bit, that the architectures of the current systems are just not really great. And so you're playing whack-a-mole and papering over things and trying to fix things that are broken at a very deep level and aren't going to get fixed anytime soon. So that's the world we live in.
There we go. All right. Important it is. Ankaj, next.
This one is a research paper which talks about agentic information retrieval.
Yeah, I thought this is interesting that they're talking about, a whole new kind of information access paradigm. Not only, unstructured data, but even how we think of it. And some of these here, building life bots and so forth. What do you think here, Luda?
Yeah, this is a proposal. So in essence, this is a structure. It comes from, I think, what's the name? One of the Chinese universities.
Mhm.
And what they're doing is really thinking through what do you need to do to equip an agent with information to be almost self-sufficient. So as you can see, on the left is the way we currently do retrieval, and on the right, it's a more intelligent retrieval with inside the agent, they have memory and thought. This is some methods of how to deal with a query. And then in the architecture or in the environment, they load up with a lot of tools for evaluating, for good retrieval and the like. So as a result, this is way more efficient structure. And they tried it. If you scroll down, Ankash, they present several cases of how it would work in a particular application, like, for example, customer service application or personal assistant application. And that makes sense to me. However, I was vacillating between optional and important because this is where the agents will go. I think important from that perspective, but it's so not done so early. That's why I ended up optional, but can be talked into important.
All right. So interesting set of ideas early.
I was right there with you, Luda. I just feel like it's just a little too early to really be raising flags about this yet.
Optional. I vote for optional. It's interesting. It's, they didn't even really implement it. So this is a Gedanken, as we used to call it, a thought experiment to a great extent.
Yep.
And could be interesting, but it's early. And, there's an old joke in computer science that every hard problem is solved by another level of indirection. And that's right. So what we're saying is don't have a schema, because schemas, once they are put in place, get rigor mortis in a day. And so it's very, very difficult because you have to think of the schema up front and you never do it right. And then the queries don't work and people get pissed and yada, yada, yada. So one of the beauties of having unstructured data and potentially quote unquote reasoning agents is you don't have to have a schema up front. We'll see. We'll see. But not a bad paper, interesting, but I wouldn't even call it important for the AI leader.
All righty. We're going for optional. Next.
The next one that we have comes from Zipra and talks about reaching 1 billion context length with RAG.
Oh my God. Talk about keeping up with the Joneses. We have 1 billion token context window. What do you think here, Tim?
Well, I think it's optional. I think it's an interesting paper. It's not really a paper, it's a brief article. It's a new approach. Again, we've been seeing this is what we were talking about, I think, last night at one level is I just don't think we're even close to done on the internal structure of these large language models. And this is an example. Context windows are important because you don't need to train a large language model if you have an infinite context window. That's all pre-training is giving you a shorter context window so your answer comes out at a reasonable pace when you ask a question. And so what they're doing here is being able to say, well, I don't have to do so much pre-training because basically I can stuff several books into the actual question. And if I can do that in a lot less time than it takes a grad student to read several books, I've got a big advantage. So that's the idea. And they're using a combined SSL, what we call Mamba in the vernacular already, the Kleenex approach, right? So Mamba is the implementation of a new type of math that combines with transformers and gives you a little bit of the best of both. And they added to that some sparse matrix parsing, if you really want to get into the details. So these are just optimization techniques, if you will, combined with a couple of new ideas, could be really interesting. But again, right now it's pretty early, so I would say optional. If you're a super geek, interesting read.
All right, we got optional here. What do you got? What do you think, Adam, Luda?
Yeah, I think it's optional, but just to note that what this is optimization of compute power. So, and then we will see a lot of those tries of what do you do at the time of the training or pre-training or extending the context window with a graph with some semantic understanding, some memory to reduce the compute time. So there's a lot of going on in that space,
Right.
but optional, I think.
Right.
All right, we're headed for optional. Adam, you go with that?
Yes, sir.
All righty, optional it is. Ankaj, next.
Okay, the next one comes from H2O.ai. So their new small model is challenging tech giants in document analysis.
Yeah, interesting. We were talking a lot last night at our learning lab about small models. Very important trend here. What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, if you could scroll down on Kaj, I thought they had a good chart here on the benchmark wars and how they're 2 millimeters higher than the other ones. You know, I thought so. I think this is optional. This is yet another indication of all the innovation going on in the small models. They're slightly better on the benchmarks. They don't have a lot of customers using it yet, but interesting, but optional for our leaders here. It's reinforcing a trend we've been talking about.
And open source too, right?
Correct.
Two trends, really. Small models and domain specificity. This is a very focused model on a very specific thing that actually is a big market. I think it's smart from a business perspective because getting information out of terrible looking documents is a big problem for a lot of corporations.
Yeah, I almost gave it an important because of that. You know, the idea of, how to use small models to get crappy to take the unstructured or undigitized data and get it into systems is a big issue.
Yeah.
I was on the board of one company working with another one, and this is a central issue for, productivity, right? And all the things that happen because of it, accuracy and so forth. All right, but we're going to give this one an optional. All right, Ankaj. We don't have a no-hitter going on, but we have heavy optional.
So the last one that we have for today, it's titled From Black Box to Glass House, the imperative for transparent AI development.
Yeah, I was going to give this an important, and because I think it's a pretty well articulated, relatively short article about, why open source is important for AI, and, so you don't have regulatory capture. I don't think there's anything new here, but I like the way this person put together a combination of the argument for open source, the idea that, you're not secure on closed source models because of the penetration that happens. Cohere has been compromised, OpenAI, and so forth. So you're not buying yourself any safety. And in fact, well documented, often cited thing that the Linux community, finds the threats usually 50% faster than, or even faster than the closed source, alternatives. So I was going to give this an important, as a good articulation of a well-known issue and relatively succinct. What did you guys
Let
think?
me disagree with my esteemed colleague, Dr. Sviocka, just slightly. The article is okay in the way it's written, but it really literally offended me in many ways. First of all, this is the, well, guns don't kill people, people kill people argument.
Yes.
Okay, but the empirical evidence is that countries that regulate heavily and don't have a lot of guns in a lot of people's hands have a lot less gun deaths. So the empirical evidence as an engineer is overwhelming. It's overwhelming. And so the idea that, well, because, people don't kill, guns don't kill people, people kill people, we therefore shouldn't regulate guns, is an American ideology, but it's a bad one in my opinion, because and the evidence is 100% against it. It's like saying, well, nuclear weapons have leaks too, therefore we should have open source nuclear weapons. Or, drunk driving is never going to be prevented, so we should just have transparency about how many drinks you've had before you get behind the car. There's so many examples of ways you can say, well, this is just stupid, okay? if it's really dangerous and it has weapon potential, we need to think pretty carefully about it. I don't think it's a great idea that private corporations own these things either. I don't think Smith & Wesson is a great idea. That's my personal opinion, because they're incented to sell guns to help people kill each other. I don't think any of this is a good idea. But I think it's complete claptrap to say that, well, because of that, everything should be open source. It's just absolutely not addressing the core issues and empirically terrible. And the other, the immediate assumption that quote unquote information wants to be free. Let me tell you about some of my colleagues in China. Information does not necessarily want to be free. That was a hippie kind of, early internet meme that has stuck around. Again, it's just an assertion. There's no evidence to that.
Tim, don't hold back. Tell me what you really think.
Yeah. This one pushed a lot of my buttons, I will say. A lot of it is because of the content being offensive. It is a well-written article. There are good points here. I don't think it's a great idea that closed organizations control this stuff either. I just don't think saying, well, because of that, open source is the answer is a thoughtful approach.
All right. What do others think?
I'm with optional, but for slightly different reason. We are going open source open source to open source vary, right? As we know from the economic perspective, but it's mostly open source, and that has been driving the industry. So in some sense, it's an argument on a different level, but it's kind of moot for me, really. So for the business leader, what does the person gain from this, really? So that's why I thought it was optional.
All right, we got two optionals here. What do you think, Adam? Were you offended?
I wasn't offended until Tim made his case, and now I feel like I should be offended. But yeah, look, I mean, we were talking just the other day. What was it? Llama 3.1, 700,000 downloads in 11 weeks. It is a moot point. No one's stopping the open source movement, and this article can make all the cases it want. It's really not going to change the situation. So I would.
There's also an open source vendor, so there's a little bit of a conflict of interest.
Oh, it's absolutely making their case. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's talking his book. There's no question about that. As they say on Wall Street. So maybe I'm sure Paul, you're going to say it's essential, right, Paul?
No, I just want what Tim had for in his coffee, because my coffee doesn't have me that fired up. So.
There you go. As my wife once said about me, she said, a lot of people mistake you for a nice guy. It's just you don't care about most things. But when they hit something that really matters to you, you're a first-class jerk.
Oh, yeah.
I said, thanks, dear. All right. Looks like we're headed for optional. Akash, what's the big tote board here?
Coming right up.
Any announcements, folks? Or anything interesting our audience should know? Well,
no, I just want to highlight. I thought it was just an excellent discussion last night U.S. time on our learning lab. We reviewed as a team the first third of the State of AI report from Nathan Benak, and I think it was just a really good discussion. So folks get a chance to look at that on our YouTube channel. Please do. I think it's well worth the time.
It was great.
Right.
Yep.
Looks like we're headed for a lot of time saving today. The secure LLM application says an important, ruined our no-hitter, and optional for the rest. All right, everybody.
John, actually, before we close, we did receive an email from one of our email newsletter consumers, and they had noted that the last few weeks we've had fewer essentials, and they really valued that. I think they were noting, Luda and John, some of our great inflation earlier last month, and
a lot of excitement.
Yes, I was going to say something snarky about how that person obviously hasn't taken a statistics course. I think it's a false correlation, but whatever. Yes, we keep our standards high here at GAI. Standards high at GAI. I'm ready for that. All right. Anything else?
That's it.
All right, everybody. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and see y'all tomorrow.